On this episode of Laid Back History, we're talking about the origins of town names. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Laid Back History. Two things before we get started into the episode. One, I want to apologize last week for the technical difficulties that we were having. I was very upset that this episode that James had worked so hard on, we had issues with our streaming service that streams pre-recorded videos to Facebook Live. Luckily, I was paying attention to it and was able to catch it, that it only showed the first 57 seconds. But just in case, for those that didn't get to see it or maybe thought they saw 57 seconds, thought there was an error and went away, didn't come back, I'm going to re-air that episode on Thursday at 7 o'clock. It was such a great episode and James put so much work into it. I couldn't believe it that it was that episode we have a problem with. We haven't had a problem up until now, and then we do. So that's going to re-air on Thursday at 7 o'clock. So you can watch that if you missed it. And then the other thing is, I want to thank everybody. Our Day of Giving, I made an appeal to you guys for our Day of Giving. We had a goal of reaching $15,000. We fell just short of that, but I had a goal of 70 donors on that particular day, and we ended up having over 80 donors. And honestly, I think that's more important in some cases because it shows the amount of support that you have. I could have had one person give, $10,000. I'd almost rather have 80 people give, $10 or whatever it would be, $100 or so. But that means a lot to me that we had so many people that were supporting supporting the Historical Society. So thank you so much. We had a lot of people from our viewership that actually gave, and I appreciate that more than you know. At some point, I'm going to put put a list up here of the viewership, people that watch Laid Back History that have donated to the Historical Society, because it means a lot. And so thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. But let's get into the actual episode. So I get, pretty much every episode that we do, we get people saying, hey, could you do an episode on this? Or can you tell me about this? And I started 2 weeks ago trying to cover some of those topics, trying to cover some of those questions that I've had. And we've got a lot. So if you've put a question out there, if you've put a suggestion for a topic out there, and I haven't done anything with it yet, I promise you that I'm going to. It is going to happen. Don't get frustrated. It's coming. I've got a lot of suggestions. I have a lot of people that watch, and they have things they want to see. So I promise you that your episode will air at some point. I'm putting together one on the militias of Washington County during the Rev War. Right now, I'm getting one put together on Quincy the Clown. So there's things coming. There's some bigger episodes that are coming. But I appreciate the support and patience with that. This episode is made up of a bunch of small questions. I don't want to say small questions. Questions that the answers are short enough that it wouldn't make an entire episode. So I thought, well, let's just put it together. And I've had some questions about town names. And so I want to look at the origins of a few town names. So Centerville, Prosperity, I'm trying to think which other ones I want to cover. Spears, Prosperity, Spears, 84 is a big one. I get that question a lot. How did 84 get its name? So we're going to just cover some of those. We're going to talk about some of them and see what we can do. So let's go ahead and start off with Centerville. So Centerville is an easy one, and it's a short one. It won't take long at all. It was originally laid out on a tract of land owned by Robert Vail in 1819. Later, about 2 years later, purchased by John Cleaver, and he laid out more of the town, expanded the town. to the point where the village once had about 28 miles of road that was incorporated into the village. So why is it called Centerville? Very simple. It is almost the exact midpoint on the national road between Scenery Hill and Brownsville. And so when they formed the town, they called it Centerville. And that's all there is to it. I wish there was a better answer than that, but that's all we've got. So let's talk about spears. So spears is another one that won't take too long. But to start, we've got to talk about Enon first. So if you know where Enon is, it's actually out where I grew up, near where I grew up, not too far from Burnsville, down on Wheeling Creek there. And there was Reverend Henry Spears, who was the pastor at the Enon Baptist Church. Sometime around 1793, 94, 95, he and a number of his members of his congregation left and went over to the Monongahela River, and they settled some land. He patented two pieces of land, Spicewood Hollow and Spears Intent. Those were two tracts of land that he had, and they settled there. Well, later on, you have around 1860, it would have been his grandson, I think it was his grandson, Apollo Spears, that lays out the original tracts. But it's not incorporated at that point, it's just a small village. And then in 1892, I believe it was Richard Spears, expands the lots and lays out more, and it's in 1894 that it is actually incorporated into Spears. So the Spears family ran a ferry between Belle Vernon and Spears. And originally the name of the town was called Belle Vernon, with no space in between. But you have Belle Vernon on one side and Belle Vernon on the other side, and that may work in big cities, but with small towns, really didn't work. And so it was eventually, and this is early on, in the 1870s, before it was ever incorporated, people started referring to it as Spears, as so you have basically Western Belle Vernon, they started referring to it as Spears, and it stuck, and when it was incorporated, it's called Spears. So basically named after the Spears family, first Reverend Henry Spears, who moved there from Enon, and then of Apollo Spears, who laid out the land. So let's talk about Marianna now. So Marianna is an interesting town because it was a purpose-built town. It was basically formed and built to be a mining town. The Pittsburgh Buffalo Coal Company, owned by the Jones brothers, they had a large vein of coal that went through there. They wanted to put the mine in, and they wanted to build what they considered to be a modern town for their workers to live in. And so they had some land that the original, kind of the small village was founded on. But then they bought other land that was owned by the Scheidler, Hayes, Rice, and Fulton families. And eventually you get about almost 1,000 acres that they lay out this town on. They build just under 300 homes, which were all made of yellow brick except for I don't know, was there 20 some wood frame duplexes, but they lay out the town. I mean, it's got paved streets, it's got sewers, it had hot water and electric. I think it cost the workers, it was $6 a month for rent, and that included your electric, your water, and garbage removal. So really, when you think about mine towns, it was extremely nice. It was a pretty progressive town. There was an arcade there. There was a school that they built. In 1910, when they're constructing this, in 1911, when they put the paved the streets, I mean, it's a pretty advanced town. Now, where it got its name is that one of the Jones brothers had a secretary called Marianna Freehan, and that is where it got its name. They named it after her, so Marianna. And so it's a kind of a simple story about how it got its name, but the town and everything, even its name, goes back to the coal company, the Pittsburgh Buffalo Coal Company. So let's see. Let's do. We got two more that I wanted to cover: Prosperity and 84. Let's talk about Prosperity first. So Prosperity was originally laid out by a gentleman by the name of Robert Wallace. He had bought a large tract of land there. And you know what? I don't know what the name of the tract of land was. I should have looked that up, but I didn't. And around 1848, he decides he's going to lay out a town. He had seen some other towns in the region, people laying them out and selling lots and making money off of it. So he thought, well, I'll do the same thing. I've got this large tract of land. I'll go ahead and sell off some lots. But it wasn't a great location. At the time, there was, there were a couple of Native American trails that were running through, but there was no railroad or anything at that moment. So it wasn't favorable, is maybe a good way of wording it. But he laid out the lots and began trying to sell it, and he was able to sell some. He got some people hooked and sold some of the lots. But he was having a little bit of trouble. So he actually had ads in the paper. And he was, really, this is a great opportunity. This is where you can, make a new living, and you can start new. And it's prosperous and growing. And he was really playing it up as best as he could. And he got more people to buy some of the lots. So he filled out an application for a town name to get it incorporated and sent it into the state government, and he wanted it called Wollaston, after him, Robert Wallace. He gets a message back from him saying that that there's already a Wollaston in Pennsylvania, so they can't approve his application for the name. So he writes back and he says, I don't know what this other Wollaston is, but do they have this? And are they this is so prosperous. I have people that are dying to get lots here, and this town is expanding and growing, and it's going to be a city. And writes them back, and they wrote back and said, we're sorry, we can't give you that name, but if your town is so amazing and it's so prosperous, why don't you call it Prosperity? And he did. So they were being very sarcastic about it. I bet this town's really something out there in nowhere, Pennsylvania. So call it Prosperity if it's so great. And he just kind of went, yeah, I think I'll do that. And they called it Prosperity. So basically it's called Prosperity because he was boasting of how prosperous it could be for people to come in and buy their lots and buy lots that he laid out and start his town. So there you go, Prosperity. So we've got one left, and it's the one that I get asked about most. So many times people ask me about this, and that is 84 PA. So 84 PA, I think, probably has more theories behind the name than any other town that I know of. Some say it was because it was incorporated in 1884. I think it was July 28th, 1884, so they called it 84. I've heard that it was named after a Major Alexander who served in the 84th PA Regiment. So it was named after him. I'm trying to think what some of the other ones are. That when it received its name, it was the year that Grover Cleveland won as president. So in honor of that, they named it 84, which if you're going to name it in honor of Grover Cleveland, wouldn't you name it like Cleveland or Groveland or something like that? But no, so there's that. What was another one? That it was 84, was it 8,400 feet from one station to the station in 84, something like that. I remember seeing. And so I've seen all these, all these different ones. And I decided to call somebody that I thought might have the answer for me, that would give me a definite answer. Because the answer that he gave me is one I heard before, but I wasn't sure whether it was true. So I called former Commissioner Bracken Burns, who is now a township supervisor for South Strabane. So I gave him a call to ask him, and when I called, he said, "So are you calling me about this because you think I was there when it was named, or because I was there when it was named?" And I said, "Well, you were there a while. You've been there a while." I actually need to have Bracken on sometime. One, just because he's a wealth of knowledge. Two, because he's got a wonderful story about his granddaughter and really making him feel old one day. And it's just a fabulous story. And I'd love to get him to tell that story on here sometime, which will explain the joke of why he said, he was there when it was named. But at any rate, so I asked him to confirm what I thought might be the right answer. And it is a very simple answer. It's a very simple answer. Originally, the town, the residents had called it Smithville. Well, Smithville was, there was another town by that name, and there was some confusion from the mail carriers because the mail came in on a train. And so there was some confusion with it being called Smithville. So they pushed for the residents to kind of rename it, to come up with a different name. Well, the way it got its name is that it was the 84th stop for that line. And on the mailbags was printed 84, so that they knew that mailbag went to this particular stop, to this town. And so they just started using that. It kind of became the nickname from the guys on the train, like, "Oh, here comes 84. Toss off that bag." And it just stuck. And so it ended up being renamed 84 PA. So there's nothing amazingly fancy about it, but I think it's a really cool story because it ends up being, one of those things. You got some confusion between Smithville and Smithville, and so they used the nickname 84, and it just kind of stuck. So 84 was a nickname, and it's still there today, and prominent enough that Joe Hardy ended up calling his lumber company 84 Lumber because it started there. So 84 PA. There's actually one I didn't bring up. Scenery Hill wasn't originally called Scenery Hill; it's called Hillsboro, but it was renamed because just down the road you had Millsboro. And there was confusion between Hillsboro and Millsboro. And so eventually they changed the name to Scenery Hill because of the scenery. I mean, up on that hill, what was it? You could see 5 states, I think, from up there. There was a observation tower that used to be there. And I think you could see 5 or 6 states from that observation tower. So Scenery Hill. But at any rate, so hopefully that answers some of the questions. I think that's all the questions I've had about town names. If you have any other ones, put them in. I'll maybe do a follow-up episode on this if I get some more questions. But again, for those that have been requesting different topics, they're coming. I promise you, they're coming. There's just so much to talk about. There's so many different things that I can discuss. It's hard to limit it, and so I'm slowly working my way through. The next couple weeks, though, we aren't going to be continuing answering the questions from our viewers. Instead, we're going to be doing some haunted history talks on October 22nd and 23rd, we have our Haunted History walking tours. And so to kind of get ready for that, to promote it and get people pumped up, I'm going to be telling some haunted history stories. So what is that? The 5th, the 12th, and the 19th of October. All three of those episodes will be haunted history stories. One of them is actually two of them I think are going to be a road trip. So looking forward to that. But again, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support on Day of Giving. The Washington County Community Foundation Day of Giving really means a lot to me. I hope you realize how sincere I am when I say that. It really does mean a lot. So, but I guess I'll leave you now, and I will see you next week for another episode of Laid Back History.